My name is Rico. I own Rico's Barbershop. I started this barbershop in 2015. What I like most about being a barber is you get to be a piece of so many people's lives. You get to see little glimpses of their life. And I don't know, something about that I really enjoy. Well, my first stroke was on a Sunday. It was September 7th, and it was, the week of my birthday. I was really looking forward to my grandson being born, though, to be honest with you. He was supposed to be born September 14th-ish. My birthday was on the 10th, and I just was hoping he'd be born on the 10th. It was a beautiful day, and I was with my wife and my daughter, Brianna, and I was sitting there just enjoying the weather, and as I got up to come in, all I can tell you is it was the weirdest thing. I had this double vision. It was kind of like the room was moving, and it was just so severe that I knew something was really wrong. I came back in the hallway. As I'm walking, I'm so disoriented, but I just put my hands on the walls. I just remember going to my wife like, hey, we gotta get going, something's not right. And then we took off toward Parkview.
Time is brain, you hear that a lot. And so from the moment an artery becomes blocked, at that point, there are brain cells that are not receiving adequate blood flow. The result of that is that those cells die. That's what causes stroke. Every second you wait, some number of thousands of neurons die. Time is essential, and you should treat it like an emergency, because it is.
So when I first met Rico, I was just starting my normal morning rounds, and I was like, we'll get your images, get you out of here, hopefully today, because you're doing so well.
So I was good to go. Thought I was good to go, really, to be honest with you.
It was 11 a.m. because I remember looking at the clock and Rico sitting in the chair and us kind of joking with our son and daughter-in-law. And
I remember I just wanted to pop my ears, so I kind of just went and popped my ears like that. As I did it, there was this sound in my brain. I went to speak, and it sounded really like this. Like that.
And when he stopped, he just kind of stared at me, and I said, what are you doing? I start to hurry around the bed. I said, are you joking right now? I was hoping that was the case, and by the time I got around the bed, he was starting to slump over out of the chair.
And my son runs out in the hallway, and he just starts yelling, we need help, we need help, we need it now, and he's yelling. And then that stroke activate again. And stroke activate comes on the PA, and everybody's just rushing.
The nurses ran down, grabbed me, and they were like, hey, Bryson, he looks totally different. I was getting ready to discharge him literally in an hour. So my heart sunk.
Being there, knowing that you want to say something, but you can't say anything. It's crazy. It's surreal.
Dr. Bennett came in. He was very cool. And he said, good news, bad news. Bad news, he's having a pretty severe stroke. And he said, the good news is, though, it's located in the main artery where I can get up and hopefully get it removed. It just didn't go to, it's not going to be okay. I wouldn't let my brain go there, I think. But it was all so fast. And the way everybody moved, I was like, he's in really good hands. I know he's in really good hands.
My wife had kept telling me, it's going to be okay. And then in my mind, I didn't really know if it was going to be all right.
It went really well. It took less than 20 minutes. It's a procedure that we do commonly enough that it's pretty streamlined. We went up with the catheter right up to the blocked artery, sucked the blood clot out, and then we could see immediately that there was blood flow restored to the brain.
And he came out and he had a little bit of a smirk, like a pleasant, little bit of a grin. And he said, I was able to get it. He goes, I got the whole thing. I will tell you, he goes, time was of the essence.
The next thing I know, basically, is I hear a voice, and the voice is like, hey, can you tell me your name? And I have a friend of mine, and he used to call me this all the time when he saw me. He'd say, Suave Rock, Rico Suave. That's what he called me, right? But as I'm laying there, and I hear this guy ask me what my name was, I don't know, I just thought in my mind, I'll tell you my name. So my eyes are closed, and before I even open my eyes, I just kind of say, Suave Rock, Rico Suave. And I open my eyes, my wife's like, oh my gosh.
And I just remember dying of laughter. His wife was there, and I was like, okay, I think we can all breathe a little bit. He's doing better.
So they released me from the neuro floor, and I went straight down to the birthing center to see baby Russell, It was awesome.
And then there we waited for about 6 hours to welcome our sweet little grandson in. But yeah, it was a lot to wrap your head around in a little bit of time.
So he's born on 9/11. He missed my birthday by 1 day. And I'm just like, so thankful that I get to be a part of his life, you know? And I can hold him, and I can talk to him, because I didn't have to be here, you know? And I'm just thankful for that.